Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third instalment of Wullie's comic book Gold. And tonight I'm joined with Double Vision, Mr. Michael Anden, and I'm guessing we're also going to have Caroline joining you. Maybe not.
Yep.
Yeah. Good evening.
Yep, we are.
Thanks.
Hi, thanks for having us on.
No problem. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. I wasn't sure what avatar was going to turn up. Whether it was going to be the yellow and black one or the Double Vision one. Yeah, I like it.
It's like a box of chocolates with us. That one's that was one of the main characters, Rake and Shord. There's two goodies. They both got swords, but you can tell one from the other mainly by the fact that one wears this mask, and the other one wears this red top, which is, I like comics where you can tell, the difference between people quite, immediately at a glance. I'm quite simple that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old animation idea that when you're designing a character, they should work in a silhouette. It's got to be some shorthand that people automatically grasp them. Yeah,
I think that when they created The Simpsons, and you could tell the difference between Lisa and Bart and Homer, just at a glance. I think that was taken from kind of the Disney kind of route of ensuring, like people like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, they were, I think, blazed into people's retinas in such a way that there was no way you were going to ever mistake them for anybody else other than those, that brand and those characters. And I think that most people probably don't give much thought to how much thought goes into branding and how much time goes into making sure that things are seared into your mind.
Sorry, can I just say hello to the chat? Hey, Statistical. Hey, Peeps. Hey, Stefani. And Captain Fuckhead. Hey, I hope you bought my book now, Fuckhead. Do you know, Wullie, I don't think he put his hand in his wallet when campaign finished. I'm watching him.
Language, Caroline. You said fuckhead.
Anyway,
Cat. Sorry, Wullie.
I've got no idea what he's talking about. 28th. But yeah, let's have a look. Hi, everybody that's in the chat. You just covered them all there. People saying hi to Zoe. And Stefani, hi there. And there you are. Hey, hi, Caroline. So hi, and of course, yep, Stato's in the chat as well.
Yeah, I've missed all these.
Plugging the campaign already.
Yeah, Statistical's hard in the paint.
Yeah. In fact, Stato did a really nice little warm-up of Wheels of Dark today that he put up on Twitter, which is really nice. If you're not following him on Twitter, you should be.
I've got to say, for my money, I mean, Elsa Dark is my favorite CG comic, but that sounds unctuous. But it isn't. It really is the case that this is the kind of the comics that I grew up loving the most. Things that kind of like had quite an anarchic hard edge, but a really good through line. There's a lot of thought that went into it, and I hope that so we go on to do more comics. That we're going to learn more from other writers and artists, within the movement, the best of them, because it's always good to kind of like keep a close eye on what everyone else is doing, because there is amazing work being done.
And I read mine with a nice couple of glasses of red wine, Wullie.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. That's the way it should be read.
Yeah, I've recommended.
But did you read it in the style of Vincent Price?
In my head?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Elsa Dark's brilliant.
No, thanks very much, guys.
Patty Bogle.
Tatty Bogleman was very dark, Wullie.
Yeah, very dark.
Yeah.
I'm getting that out again on Halloween.
It makes me want to watch Wicker Man, which I know I'm going to end up having to watch on my own.
No, you're not. I hate Wicker Man. I'm never watching that again.
Oh yeah, well, you can tell I love it. If you've read Tatty Bogleman, I love Wicker Man.
Yeah,
but thanks for saying that, guys. That's really nice of you. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is the comics that have influenced you and the writers or wherever we end up going. But first of all, I've got your campaign up here on the screen. It's I don't know why I've got it in dollars. It's not. I've not got my AVN on or anything. So
more impressive in dollars, actually.
That's all right. right though, Wullie.
It-
I mean,
It-
Cap can back it in dollars if he wants.
It looks like hi, Bristolian
Sorry,
Dave.
I'm not going to go over it. Hi, Bristolian Dave.
I hope you're out of the board,
There's my AV.
Dave.
Oh, there's
You're
my
doing well.
AV. Oh, my VPN's on. That's what it is. There you go. It looks good in dollars, though, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Always
Leave
looks
it in
good in
dollars.
dollars.
That's all good.
I love the look of this campaign. The minute I saw it, I just thought it looks so unique and and so European as well. Yeah.
When I was to kind of or emulate people like Simon Bisley and there are other people like Jim Murray. They were really kind of masters of their craft, but they were, I think, mostly working in kind of physical media, like paint or what have you. And although I had a lot of fun trying to work with that, I never really made much progress. So by the time I got my head around digital coloring, it was like kind of a godsend to me, because it was, I mean, I do miss the physical process of painting, the smell and the kind of the texture and everything.
I don't miss the swearing.
Yeah, the swearing I miss as well.
Yeah.
but yeah, but I finally managed to find a way to kind of imitate the kind of look I was going for, which was this kind of I don't know if it's called like hyper real. I know in the the art world, there's a term
it's kind of like it's
painting.
Translucent. It's really unique.
Yeah.
And I mean that I mean that in a good way, because I know sometimes people use words like unique, but I mean it's like it's unique in so far as like it genuinely feels as if you've molded these characters out of clay.
I do feel the same way. Yeah, there's a 3D element to them as well.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess when I was originally thinking up the characters and everything else, I guess I did envisage them as being kind of like as much cartoon characters, comics characters, also being physical, like in a film world, or a game world.
Yeah, film. I saw it. That's very quick.
Yeah. I mean, funnily enough, it was in a dream where this World's first came to me. It was quite a long while ago, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And it wasn't actually one of the main characters. The guy in the hat, who kind of seemed to be almost giving me kind of like a come hither kind of gestures, like come into this world, explore this world, bring it to life. And he had these kind of like Morpheus black round glasses, so it kind of was kind of inscrutable. But when I woke up, I kind of like I was quite rougher than Morpheus. I kind of like was quite fascinated with this character and thought, I definitely got to try and bring this world to life. So I did a few kind of test pages back when I first was trying it. It was in acrylic paint, and although it looked pretty intriguing, it wasn't quite there yet. So it did take a while to develop the look of the characters and everything. But it's the way it's turned out now is certainly better than I even expected it in the first place. So I think we're both pretty happy with that.
Very much so. Although talking about colour, my red hearts come out as black on the chat for some reason. That's weird.
Well, you are a black-hearted soul at times.
Well, it would seem so. I had too much Ailsa Dark, I think.
This is you're looking in the private chat, I think, or something.
Am I? I'm in the comments section. Yeah, I'm in the comments section.
But you're not on YouTube. So
now
so on YouTube, you won't look black-hearted.
I hope not, because it looks black-hearted to me. Yeah, that was really weird.
It's looking black.
Sorry. But I've never seen that before. Yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. On that note, I'm going to come back to the campaign later on at the end, and we'll have a look at everyone else's as well. But I'm just about to get started on your choices. Okay. So first choice that you came with was not a comic, but a pulp writer who has had lots of influences on comics and popular culture throughout the decades, and it's this chap here, this handsome looking guy.
Oh yeah, Lovecraft.
I recently saw a GIF of Lovecraft. I don't know if it was for real, but it was of him actually laughing or smiling. I don't know if it was kind of like a deep fake or whether it was real, but it really shows that I guess he could have had a sense of humor on top of everything else. It wasn't all necessarily kind of about the dark esoteric kind of abyss.
I'm sure
it
he
was
had a
all
sense
about
of humour.
and it kind of made me realize that this is something that I think I've always thought in the back of my mind about Lovecraft's work, and the Cthulhu cycle, that a lot of people probably miss, is that there was a dark streak of humor running through his work as well. It wasn't just sorry, I was just a bit distracted there because I do actually have that exact edition of that book. It's a cracker, but
It's the one you bought for me, isn't
I
it?
love, I just love that cover.
Can I just tell the story? It was just after 9/11, and I used to fly a lot on business to the States, and Mike brought me a surprise present, and I was flying Air America as well, so it was kind of like I was a bit scared, and I opened up this present, and it was this, which was really nice and distracted me all the way.
Didn't Air America close
Nice.
not long after that? Was that
probably the day after I flew?
Bringing in bad vibes.
So I always remember that because that's when I opened that book, when Reddit was on that trip, literally after 9/11.
I don't know if there's editions of the books. I mean, there's like 3 volumes of those ones. And so when I read those, that was literally round about the same time as when I was coming up with Mortal Worlds. And I was kind of like bouncing ideas off with Caroline about, how dark, did we want to try and take the story? Was there kind of like was it more the science fiction elements and the fantasy elements, or was there more of a kind of a horror vibe? So that was a really fun time, when we were kind of exploring Lovecraft.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's the first Lovecraft book I read as well, was that particular one. Lovecraft wasn't somebody that I'd read a lot growing up. I was into Edgar Allan Poe.
Have you read that one?
But yeah, that's the one that I actually bought, sat down and read. I didn't buy all 3 volumes, but I did get that volume. I think it's At the Mountains of Madness was what I wanted to read, and that's why I bought that one.
There were tremendous kind of like for anyone who wanted to dive straight in, that I really recommend it. But I did notice it was kind of increasing my vocabulary quite against my. He does seem to kind of like go overboard in the I think it's called the glossolalia. Is it glossolalia?
Yeah, he uses words that no other author ever used.
Oh, not like you then, Mike.
Yeah. So I mean, I realized reading the book that I kind of wanted to go in the opposite direction. I wanted to be very kind of sparing in the language, and using not just kind of one word, when 10 will do, which is like a Lovecraft technique, but also even one syllable.
But both approaches have their place.
No, it's nothing. It was nothing for me to do. Obviously, anything has its place. If you can do it well in literature or art or anything else. Certainly, I realized that I wanted to be quite sparing and I wanted to be brief, because although if you're writing a book and you're of somebody of Lovecraft's caliber, you can do what you like. But
sorry, talking of caliber, I'm just laughing at the chat. Bristolian Dave is saying he's never actually read any Lovecraft, and I was about to say give it a go, and Stato said, sorry to say, it's a bit dry and vague.
Yeah, you know what? I recently read Stato. I think it was, who's this artist? Kind of he worked on the Mad Max films and used to do work in 2000 AD. I can't remember his name.
Brendan McCarthy.
Yeah,
that's the
one.
2000 AD than Mad Max.
And he was saying that he was recently introduced to Lovecraft, and he actually, it was a kind of like it wasn't up to his what he considered to be the best type of horror writing. It wasn't up to the standard he thought it should be, and he kind of thought that Lovecraft probably was basically basing it on phobias and all kinds of personal, psychological problems that he had, rather than out of sheer inspiration or curiosity or anything like that.
But at least he turned it into something creative.
Well, no, but I don't want to dismiss that point, because I think that people can have different points of view, and they can both have a point. And I certainly think that
I think that's a
Brendan,
valid take on him. But I also think he has to be put in. He has to be put in historical context. You have to read them aware of when they were written as well.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of cases, it is very much he was the first one there, the first one doing it. So
Yeah.
you've got to keep that in the back of your head when you're reading them. I would recommend people start with the shortest. I mean, they are mostly short stories anyway, or novellas. Start with the shortest ones and can work your way to reading the longer stories.
It's okay. Yeah.
That's okay.
People's phones do off except when they're off.
I use the Outsider in my college work. I have it as part of an assignment for an illustration assignment because it's a nice little evocative mood piece more than anything. And I think most of his stories to me are mood pieces.
It's absolutely right that a lot of his work are actually more about atmosphere rather than what people might assume to be kind of like gore and guts, or kind of like kind of squamous, beings.
Squamous,
and stuff.
That's one of it. Stato says a lot of good ideas have come away from that.
Yeah, he's been a big influence on so many things that have come since. I mean, I guess one of the most famous ones, outside of his own work, that he's been a huge influence on was the Alien kind of movies. The xenomorph design, and I think H.R. Geiger must have been fairly well acquainted with Lovecraft, although I'm not aware that he ever actually credited him as an influence, as far as I know. But it seems quite obvious to me.
And was it the Aubrey J in Hellboy as well? That was a massive.
Well, yeah, I mean,
influence thing, I think.
Who was it that created Hellboy now?
So I think the
Mike Mignola.
Mike Mignola. To his own credit, he did credit Lovecraft a lot. I think he didn't.
I mean, most of his work's in public domain, but not all of it. But most of it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does he have an estate? Or
I'm not sure. Well, I just know when they were published, because when I did the Tatty Bogleman was my crypt keeper for my Tales of Mystery comic that I published a few years ago, and there was a couple of adaptations in that, and one or two Lovecraft stories. When I did the math, the arithmetic, they didn't fall within public domain, or I wasn't sure if they did or not, so I steered clear of them.
I did. I knew that the Tatty Bogleman reminded me of someone, the crypt keeper.
Tatty Bogle.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, he was definitely. There was an influence in the design there. I think that. I was thinking, where does that come from? And I think he probably nailed it there.
And also I agree with Peeps as well. Color Out of Space is one of the best films I've seen. And before it came out, I just thought they would not do that well. There's no way that they would.
I've got to say, I really enjoyed Space, but what I enjoyed even more, I think, was when I first heard of the concept of the film and the book, which was, Lovecraft is somebody that, again, it's mentioned that he's not to everybody's, taste, because he goes really into the kind of like really long descriptions of everything. But sometimes he doesn't get enough credit, I think, he sometimes doesn't use any description at all. Like he'll say something like that, for example, the meteorites from Color Out of Space only had a color as a point of analogy. It wasn't actually a color so much. It was just the closest you could say. It was a color that nobody had ever seen before. And you think, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's, is it a color or a smell or a sound?
I think that's one of his things. He speaks to the gaps between the imagination.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I think, I guess the concept is synesthesia, when you try to reach for a different type of description if the normal type doesn't do. Like if it's not quite a sound, they say, well, what is it? Is it is it a sight? Is it a smell or something, or is it a kind of different type of sensation? And I think he was quite fascinated with that human perception and what lies beyond the so-called five senses.
Exactly. I was just about to say extra sense.
Yeah.
not extra-sensual is the word
From-
that came to mind.
From
That's
Beyond
not right,
that
is
you've
it?
got there as well is actually also one of my favorite movies because I mean he's certainly I think it was Stuart Gordon who did that one, and
Yeah.
you know, it's almost like he plucked a kind of like a perfect film straight out of my mind in terms of what kind
Yeah,
of
well, I think I put both these up. I think Stuart Gordon's probably the.
yeah.
I've not seen Colour Out of Space. I need to watch that. But he's the only one that's really kind of got what was behind Lovecraft, even if they weren't literal translations, especially From Beyond. I
Yeah.
think that's the closest, in my mind, to a
Yeah.
Lovecraft on screen.
And Jeffrey Combs as well. I mean, his performances. I know he's a bit over the top for some people.
Oh, he can be a bit hammy, but I think that's part.
But I think that that's part of the selling, you know, kind of Lovecraft to the wider world. Sometimes
Yeah.
you do need to go a bit overboard to show that it's not just something that's dry. You know, it's actually quite animated work. You know, and ideas and characters as well. They're not just kind of these dusty, you know, kind of scholars.
Dusty old fogies like me.
Yeah.
On that subject, I just want to say hello to stencil artist Jan. I hope you're all right.
Oh, Stents. You're right, Jan.
Stents.
Yeah, Jan.
Yeah.
Not that he's a dusty old fogey. I think.
Well, you know, I think that we all have, like when I'm, you know, working and scribbling away, you know, or trying to work, you know, that I've become a bit antisocial. As you know, if I'm trying to draw something and it isn't all working out.
Can I just interrupt
fucking...
to say in the language a bit? This must be an extremely subjective concept. A bit. It's equivalent to locking himself in a cellar.
Yeah, but it's only for a short while. They'll lock themselves in the cellar, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, without any wine in it, I have to say.
Yeah, and you know, the chains are always optional. You know, you don't have to lock them. You know. Be that as
I don't want you talking about my second income on the internet. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Moving swiftly along.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to get you cut off, Wullie. I promise.
But I think there's a bit of Lovecraft in all of us. I think when we're growing up, you know, there's always kind of like you know, the notion of the boogeyman and all that kind of stuff, and you know, the monster in the wardrobe.
In the dream world,
they're a massive cliche. I suppose that, you know, most of us have some you know, kind of you know, awareness of the superstitions and everything that, you know, people say, and you know, they're quite fun to entertain the idea of these things. You know, when we're very young, most of us grow out of these things, but a few of us.
I'm not sure in the dream world, as I say.
Well, I mean, it does its own thing. The dream world, you know, it kind of like seems to be its own narrative. You know, it goes forcefully headlong without even kind of consulting you. You know, your conscious mind. But I'm very grateful for people like Lovecraft. I'm aware of the controversy, by the way. You know, I'm mixed race myself, and I know that Lovecraft, you know, wasn't backwards in coming forwards, but you know, he had some fairly unsavory ideas about race and stuff. And some people say, well, he was a guy of his time, and you know, things were different then. I don't give him that kind of like that much rope. You know, I don't give him that much leeway, but sometimes you're dealing with somebody who isn't very kind of like open to the rest of the world, and you know, you insulate yourself. And
I think that's it. That's the word, insularity. If you don't, sometimes if you don't go out and experience things, then
and you can form a fear of things that you don't need to.
Plus, if you're, you know, you spend all your time in your own head, and you're a recluse.
Yeah. So, you know, he wasn't exactly a man of the world. He was very well read, but he wasn't exactly well traveled.
Not experientially.
Yeah.
Well, there's a word for this, isn't there? I can't think of what it is though.
But
no, I agree with you. I think there's no real excuse saying he was a man of his time, because it wasn't that far back for that excuse to kind of really even be put forward, I don't think. I think all you can say is there were many people who were like him, and there were many people who were a bit more enlightened, but that enlightened thinking hadn't really taken root when he was working, I don't think.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new TV show that's
no, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet, but it does intrigue me because I guess what they're trying to do is kind of rehabilitate Lovecraft, if that's what they think that needs doing, or or trying to introduce it to a new, not just a new generation, but like to people who probably had never heard of him or entertained reading him because of the associations, the negative associations. But
Oh, there's something interesting. Peeps has
Yeah.
just said.
Yeah.
oh, Lovecraft. Well, maybe he was a bit more
I didn't know
broad-minded
that.
than we realised. Then that was all in vogue in the Victorian age, though, wasn't it? With kids. So
Yeah,
maybe,
I think all the
maybe his parents.
they always had little photographs of the
Yeah,
little
he
boys
wouldn't
in
have
little
made it.
girls' dresses. Yeah,
Yeah.
very
I
strange.
don't think he would have made the most convincing lady, at the best of times, to be honest.
Not at all. But yeah, so well, Lovecraft. Shall we move on and see how he's maybe influenced some of the other work
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you've,
sure.
you've actually
Sure.
picked here? Because
Maybe
I believe he has.
No, please keep time, Wullie, because Mike will ramble
I
forever.
will.
Just like he'll draw forever if I let him.
Forgive my husband, he tends to ramble.
Well, no, it's because
No,
you've got
no.
a lot of good stuff to say. There's only so much time.
Yeah, well, that the whole point of doing this is to let people come on and ramble. So I'm good. The more you ramble, the better it is. So let's ramble about this.
Yep.
This image, if anybody doesn't know, is from Slain. And I picked it because I thought it linked really nicely in with the Cthulhu-style creatures
Very
of
much
Lovecraft. So
Yeah.
do you want to take over and let me
Yeah.
hear what you think about Slain?
It
Or
is Slain.
Slonya. I'm half Irish, and apparently the Irish call it Slonya.
Yeah, but it was 2000 AD readers call it Slain.
How
Yeah,
do
we
you
call it
know? I'm
Slain.
not half Irish and
Yes,
Irish. 2000 AD.
whatever you called it when you were a kid, David Bowie to me is David Bowie, and Darkseid is Darkseid, and that's the way it's always going to be.
Yeah.
So Slain is Slain.
Slonya.
So when I was reading, when I first discovered Slain, I mean, yeah, my mind was blown, straight away with this artwork. This is Glenn Fabry, and
Yeah.
at the time I was just trying my hand at kind of, black and white, very detailed black and white work. I think I'd also just discovered Bolland at the time, and I don't know what technique Glenn Fabry used. I mean, whether there was micro pens, at the time, but he managed to bring to life just these amazing looking characters and monstrosities.
I don't know how he did that.
Yeah, and I don't know how much time he
Without
was given,
computer,
because
I
I
don't
gather that time was of the essence, and kind of like fast publishing schedule of 2000 AD at the time. And I do appreciate what his forebears like Belladini and Mike McMahon were doing with Slain at the time. But this was really my first introduction when I was around 12 years old or so, and I was just so blown away by trying to make what is essentially a mythical world, in historical mythical fiction, bringing it up to date. And of course, it also had the tenacity of being the one story in 2000 AD, or seemed to be, that was set in the past, or a fictional past.
But I think you were also influenced. I mean, the incredible detail and the beauty of it. I mean, you have to linger over it. That's why I always loved reading it. When I was young, you could just linger on each panel and get in the detail. And I think that's what
I could just get lost, for ages in any typical kind of like Slain panel, because there's not just attention to detail, but it's this world building, which is something again that was hugely influential on me, but also had such a wonderful streak of kind of dark humor again, because this is like I remember Slain and Ukko the Dwarf. This isn't probably something that would be considered so politically correct now, but there was
Ukko was my least favorite comic character ever. Do you remember on Mandy's stream?
But
always, I don't know why.
But it was like kind of like Laurel and Hardy for me. It wasn't meant to be taken seriously. The fact that he had this, and also the fact that Ukko a lot of the time did actually get the upper hand, and actually would actually be seen to be the brighter of the two. Ukko was obviously very kind of venal, and Slane was essentially kind of like, at times just a barbarian kind of lunk,
unthinking.
Yeah, but they did form a kind of a complementary pair.
Unthinking and venality going together.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and so like Slane was essentially led by not so much his head but his his kind of like stomach and his groin, and and the tip of his axe was like his favorite way of dealing with problems. Ukko was more about kind of guile and ingenuity and also especially trickery. Yeah,
salacious crumb meets ingenuity.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of that.
Yeah, and I think Pat Mills also, I think he had a love of Celtic and Irish myths, which really shone through in this. I love the fact that he was able to kind of sell an idea which may have been, a difficult one to, the typical kind of 12, 13.
No, I think it lurks in all our souls, really.
Yeah, but I mean, let's say if like a history teacher tried to bring you, up to speed about Celtic mythology and things like that, or your literature teacher, they might have had a hard time of doing it.
But it's the medium, isn't it? Giving you that.
Yeah. I think also there's like I think you said it. You said authentic. There's an authentic feel to this. It's not like It's not like a made-up world.
It's reframing something, and playing with you had.
Yeah. But what we're looking here, we're looking at.
And so Pat Mills.
We're looking at this is a. See, my favourite was always Bellardinelli's Slane, just because he just was.
Yeah.
It's only one word for his work, and that's mental, and here he has having one of his spasms.
Was he Spanish or Italian? Bellardini?
Spanish, I believe. Yeah, Massimo.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I think
I'm more familiar with his work from Ace Trucking, but again, he just likes such beautiful brushwork.
Yeah, and just not afraid to be illustrative as well.
Yeah.
It was one of my favourite covers. But of course, the thing about Slane was he really kind of, in a lot of people's minds, it was this chap here that did it for them.
Simon Bisley, this is something interesting that I've noticed not a lot of people or hardly anybody seems to comment on, but his style has changed, I'd say, fairly dramatically over time. He still kind of does the same kind of subject matter, his favorite kind of like, topics, extreme, violence and, muscles and, very over the top mayhem. So, although he can do quite, more placid work as well, like he did for Hellblazer, did some covers for that, which were much more restrained and everything, and also Doom Patrol. But I really love the palette of colors that he used to use.
You should say that, because that blue is very redolent of Mortal Worlds, I think.
Well, this is it. I make no secret of the fact that I was, I've long tried to imitate, especially kind of Simon Bisley's color palette.
Well, yeah, as you've said, but that's particular.
He wasn't the first to kind of come up quite with that kind of style. There were people like Frank Frazetta, who I think Simon Bisley did credit quite a lot as well, with being a huge influence on him in terms of kind of proportions and palette and grace. More recently, Bisley seems to have abandoned a lot of that kind of very kind of lucent, kind of very vibrant palette. He seems to use a lot more gray these days, and I guess he's trying to kind of like rein back a little bit. He doesn't want to, to stuff to look quite as cartoony as he used to. But for my money, this was his heyday for me. This is when, he was very hungry to be noticed. So he kind of like maybe went overboard with things, with the reds and the blues and just combining things, putting colors where you wouldn't normally see them. Like you see that guy who's like hanging upside down, and there's that kind of like that green tint. on the flesh, and that someone might say, well, why is that guy green or something? Over there, has he got gangrene or something? But that's not something that really occurs to most people, I think, because it just works. It's just part of his technique to kind of like get you to retain and stay on the image. So for me, I could just like look at Bisley work forever. He's easily one of my top 3 artists. I think Bolland being another one, one of the others. So again, kind of like 2000 AD artists being, the biggest influence on me.
The first kind of Bisley I saw was American work, funnily enough, because I'd stopped reading 2000 AD when he came along, so I didn't read his work until it was collected. So I was actually more aware of his work on things like Lobo, and then I went back, and after having not read any kind of 2000 AD stuff for a few years, I went back and I read his work. So I wasn't actually experienced it at the time.
His Lobo work was actually kind of like him harking back in some ways to when he really just first started in 2000 AD, when he was just doing black and white work. He wasn't painted. When he was doing ABC Warriors, and that's something I discovered later as well. And again, I was amazed to find out not only that he was an amazing painter, but he could actually do incredible work in black and white as well, just using what he called cheap felt tip pens. I think he might have been kind of underselling it a bit. It looked a little bit more expensive, the types of pens he was using.
Cheap Pantone pens, maybe.
Yeah.
But good choice. And again, the whole kind of like link to mythology is a kind of almost it's a sort of thing that Lovecraft did as well. You build your own mythology, but you hold it in reality so that people can actually feel that there's some kind of sense that they are going to be affected by what it is they're reading. I think that's what Pat Mill does as a writer. He kind of he holds it in a certain reality that allows you to put yourself in that place. Because there's been so many different artists, but just by showing these ones here, people see there's just been so many different styles. And in 2000 AD, when I know that when Ballard and Ellie was doing it, and even I think when Glenn Fabry was doing it, they would alternate every few issues. So you also had like Welshman David Pugh, he would be working on it, and you get him for maybe 3 or 4 issues, and then you'd get Ballard and Ellie for 3 or 4 issues, just because the workload for one artist doing something like that, especially something I don't have here, is Michael McMahon, whose work again was at that time was very intricate, with lots of kind of like strange hatching that's really just, it's kind of influenced me. I kind of hatch the way that he does, although it doesn't look the same. It's just that kind of, there's a sense of urgency to the way that he uses his pen and the brush. And so it was always interesting as a kid to open an issue and see it's a different artist this week. But it all was held together by Pat Mills.
It was exciting.
And so the idea of staying.
It's definitely like the thing with Pat Mills, the way that he was able to keep people, keep his artists on the same kind of track, even though they allowed them to very much have their own different styles. But the fact that you still had the same vision, and it was always Pat Mills's vision ultimately, and it was almost unmistakably Slane's universe, and that was quite an achievement as well. I don't know how closely he worked with them, in terms of like telling them, I need you to keep to this kind of style or whatever, but it clearly there was the collaboration worked, quite tightly.
Yeah, definitely. Probably played to their strengths as well once you saw how they worked as artists. Because he's a good writer that way, because he's worked with so many different and disparate styles from artists. I'm going to move on to your next choice for me here. And I'll be honest, I haven't read many of these, but it's The Invisibles.
Yeah.
So we're talking Grant Morrison, and originally it was Steve Yoel. Those were the issues that I remember reading. And they'd come off of Zenith in 2000 AD at that time, hadn't they?
Yeah. I think at the time I wasn't familiar with his work on Zenith when I first read Invisibles, but I mean, funnily enough, I wasn't reading many comics when I first heard about it. When I first, I think I was first actually introduced to Invisibles when I was reading Melody Maker. Occasionally, they would touch on kind of medium not related to music, and Invisibles was something that I said, look, regardless of what else you're into, you've got to check this comic out. And it was actually that one on the bottom left, that issue that they were speaking of.
I think that's the one you introduced me to.
I guess because there's the Beatles kind of like looking influence, and Oasis were big at the time. But I thought, that sounds kind of intriguing. But I didn't get round to it straight away. I waited a couple of years until it kind of came to me. I was working in a comic shop at the time, and I noticed the cover, and I thought, I meant to get back to that. I meant to check that out. And when I read it, I realized I've had to start at the beginning, because I was immediately kind of like immersed in this kind of really kind of conspiratorial kind of story writing, which
that's the thing I liked about it as well.
Yeah, the hard sell. I mean, the pitch for Invisibles is, imagine every kind of crazy theory and myth that you've ever been introduced to and told it's not real. Imagine if they were all real. And imagine if you'd just been basically lied to and they were all real simultaneously, even if they sometimes kind of contradict each other. Sometimes Invisibles didn't work. Not every issue was a kind of like a complete pulse pounder, but this is definitely the kind of comic which I wish more people would investigate to see what potential there lies in comics. You said, well, you read the Stevie Owl issues, yeah?
I read some of them. Again, maybe that's one of the reasons why it didn't quite stick with me. I know people who love it, but I didn't read them sequentially. I think I dived in maybe issue 3 or 4, and then maybe read issue 6, that kind of way, rather than actually kind of reading them in sequence. And it just wasn't sticking for me, which is odd, because I think everything by Grant Morrison that I had read up until then, I was enjoying. I stuck with Animal Man all the way to the end, and Doom Patrol as well. But for whatever reason, this didn't really click.
There is the possibility, I guess, that with me and Caroline, I think it was our first introduction to Grant Morrison, so we weren't familiar with some of the kind of techniques that he might have been better at previously, but like Doom Patrol or Animal Man.
But like Wullie, I love Doom Patrol. That's one of my absolute favourites.
Yeah. I mean, for me, probably Doom Patrol might actually have the edge, his run on that. But Invisibles was definitely for me a worthy successor. Have you been watching
the TV series, Wullie?
No, I saw them in the episode Titans that they did, and they did them. They didn't seem too bad, but no, I haven't seen the TV show that they've done of Doom Patrol yet.
Yeah, I thought I might do a binge watch this weekend. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I think I'll definitely give it a go at some point.
The storyboardist.
Yeah, he is
on the show, which is I gather he really enjoys that as well. He's
if it rains tomorrow, I'm trying to talk Mike into a binge watch day. Oh no, for Saturday. I keep thinking tomorrow.
What for Doom Patrol?
Yeah.
Well, it definitely is something I want to get around to. So Saturday.
I'd like a binge watch day.
Saturday is good as days.
It's about a year since we've had one.
Yeah, Invisibles as well. I mean, I know for a long time Grant Morrison has had the TV rights. He was with the BBC for a while.
BBC Scotland were going to make it years ago.
Essentially one. Yeah. I mean, that I don't know whether that could have worked if they were really intent on making it a kind of like a protracted series or something, because you couldn't do it in like just kind of like 7 or 8 episodes to do any kind of justice for me. But at the time, I think it probably was falling out of favor because it might have been associated with considered that it falls on the conspiracy propagating side of things, of fiction.
Be careful because of the era 404. We're back in that era again, I think.
I mean, even Grant Morrison himself admitted kind of like midway of writing the whole series that he had kind of an epiphany where he was kind of falling into kind of like certain tropes. He was like in some ways breaking ground, but in other ways he was kind of getting bogged down in tropes about good versus evil and all that kind of stuff, and few shades of grey. And he said he didn't really want to be involved in kind of like fostering that kind of mindset, you know, the kind of like the Rorschach or the Mr. A kind of mindset of there is good actions and negative actions, and nothing in between. Which I guess some I think that Robert Anton Wilson calls Aristotelian logic, which is like there's correct and incorrect and nothing in between, and maybe he just ate something interesting and had a brainwave and decided to turn around the whole kind
But
of.
Invisibles has that flavour about it, I think, of psychedelic. What?
Yeah,
Of
a lot of
psychedelic
psychedelic.
ingestion, shall
Yeah.
we say?
Yeah, it kind of pretty much starts that way and never really kind of like stops. It is
It's
very
definitely one I think I'm going to have to go and sit down and kind of like read through. And because the one thing that interested me was years after it started it was the whole kind of like a Gideon Stargrave thing where he'd taken Michael Moorcock's Jerry Cornelius, and that I do like. I'm a big fan of the Moorcock Jerry Cornelius books, so I might have to dive in and see what he was doing there. I know Moorcock wasn't happy, but
the whole Michael Moorcock influence. I mean, at the time I hadn't read any of his work. I was mostly familiar with interviews with Alan Moore when he'd mention him, his influence on him. I think that also kind of steered me towards investigating the book as well. And this whole idea of having not necessarily anti-heroes so much as like characters, protagonists who not just like necessarily even like 2 or 3 dimensional, but even more than that, whilst not losing the attention of the reader. It's like how complicated, how much variation in their motives can you have before you kind of feel, oh, I can't relate to this character because they're just like this, they're too kind of convoluted or something. But for me, he always managed to just walk that tightrope. He always managed. Grant Morrison always managed to make his characters just on the right edge of. They're sometimes infuriating in terms of your kind of unpredictable behavior and stuff. For example, you'd have King Mob, who at one moment he seems to be this kind of James Bond-esque kind of quasi-anarchist. And the next, he's this kind of like Socratic philosopher, who's trying to initiate young Dane there, who's like with the Molotov cocktail, into a much more kind of a subtle idea of what reality consists of.
But there's a very Morpheus feel to it as well, isn't there, Matrix-wise?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think definitely the Matrix sisters, I suppose they are now, aren't they? Definitely they were influenced by it. The fact that they were influenced by comics, says to me that they must have been influenced by this.
I gather they actually did bring a lawsuit against Grant Morrison a long time ago.
I didn't know that.
Oh no, sorry, my mistake. I think it was actually the other way around.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah,
Grant Morrison brought one against them after the Matrix came out. Beg your pardon. Because like there were kind of like a lot of obviously similarities, such as initiating the kid into this kind of metaphysical notion of the world where there were these agent-like gatekeepers all around, and also kind of these kind of superheroic people who are trying to break the brainwashing, break the programming the society is kind of like imprisoned in. So quite a bit of tying.
Cool.
Between the two, but they were just different enough, certainly that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think that it was still.
No, I think I didn't realise that. If you, I can't imagine Grant Morrison suing anybody. Maybe DC were doing it. I don't know. That's actually DC were. I don't know if they would have been owned by Warner at that time. That would have been very weird, wouldn't it, to have Grant Morrison suing? Yeah, something that's been put out there by Warner.
That could be one of the reasons.
I'm seeing a conspiracy here. I'm thinking there's a conspiracy behind this.
3 or 4 days.
It could be
3 or 4 days.
a conspiracy against itself.
Yes, I know. I'm thinking, yeah. Sorry, right. That's enough of that. We'll be talking about JFK in a minute, but it does lead
I was
us.
just thinking. I'm a bit quiet then. You need to be careful.
Yeah, it was just you never know
Yeah,
who's
I had
listening.
it the wrong way around to start with. So,
Well, no, it's the error 404, isn't it? The YouTube algorithm will kick in.
well, before we move on from the Invisibles, I mean, if it's okay to just mention what the Wachowski sisters mentioned about considering the Matrix being a trans allegory, I think it's perfectly okay for the creators to decide for themselves what it means to them now. But I think that everybody's entitled to say for themselves also
what they thought.
What it means to them too. So I think that people don't need to necessarily fight over it. It can mean exactly what it's always meant to you.
I didn't know they were fighting over it.
Well, yeah, some people are saying that it's a retcon. It may be a retcon for the Wachowski sisters now, but for other people, if they feel that it's for them, it's not redolent of a trans allegory. That's fine as well.
You see, that's it. I don't follow Twitter, so I always miss all that stuff.
Yeah.
I've started just going in and looking at maybe kind of like if something's been liked or mentioned me, I'll look at those dimensions now. I don't tend not to look at too much on Twitter. Yeah, for my own sanity.
But where do you stand on creators kind of changing their interpretations of their own work?
Hey, no, I don't. Wullie probably wants to go on with his comics. I'm not sure. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Are you thinking of anyone in particular, or just the Wachowskis here? Yeah.
George Lucas, for example. I mean, I think later on, he.
I dislike the edits that he's made in the work, but it's his work. He can do what he wants. I just think they should always leave the original work available, because that's the work that resonated with people. So when I remember queuing up at the age of 11 outside the Odeon in Glasgow to see Star Wars, and seeing it for the first time, and buying the Treasury edition and the weekly comic and all that kind of stuff, and the movie that I'm got now in Blu-ray isn't that movie. So it's fine he does that, but give us the option to go back and watch the movie that we watched originally. That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple of those edits really changed the flavour of the whole thing, and not being able to get the originals, it kind of soured it for me a bit.
I stand with that too. Yeah, give people the choice.
Yeah, it's kind of like they try to make effects seamless now, so you don't notice special effects are there. But I always liked the idea that as technology moved on, you could see what was different in movies because of the special effects. So you could, when a matte line was there, or you could see a transparency around a ship, you remembered that, and it's kind of like you knew it was coming up when you watched the movie again. Whereas now that's all gone. So these are all sort of like their texture to the movie, and that texture's been removed.
I totally agree that there was something that actually, for me, enhanced the experience of the films with things which perhaps newer generations, they would have less patience with or be less enamored with. But for me, when I see that kind of stuff, you can kind of see the joins and the seams sometimes, or Superman or Star Wars in their original form. It didn't take me out of the film. It actually immersed me more into the film. It made it kind of hyper real. I don't know if that's the kind of phrase I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It more like gave it a dreamlike quality, which actually enhanced the experience rather than jolting me out and saying, "Oh, I can see how they did that and they didn't do it well enough." And those movies were no Plan 9 from outer space. To use a reference from
but even Plan 9, the thing is they remind you that there's people behind it creating this,
Yeah.
you know, and that's their imprint on the movie. And that gets lost when you start updating things and polishing things. Yeah. But, and thanks to Stato for what he said there. There you go. Actual discussion. So we're not just talking rubbish here. That's good to know.
You know, I just wanted to say thank you, Stato, because I like that, but I'm always really worried that I'm boring the listeners somehow. So I kind of try not to delve too much. So it's really lovely to hear that. Thank you for saying it.
Yeah, cheers, mate. But I think
I guess I'm scared that I'm boring, basically, is probably what I'm saying.
Not
like
at all.
the
Not at all.
Boys.
No, the Pet Shop Boys aren't boring.
No,
Oh, they're a wee bit
I really like one of their songs. I just can't remember
I
which
think
one
one of those
now.
things is called being boring, which we're being, I think, anything but.
Well, no, I do. I have a real thing about not boring people and really worrying that I am.
Well, that in itself isn't boring.
So thank you, Stats.
What's it called?
Self-awareness or self-examination, but you never know, because other people are kind of really different, and you think maybe discussion is boring for people.
Well, you know, one of these things is like, I love talking about comics and the creation, you know, the craft of movies, but of course not everybody's it's not going to be everybody's thing. You know, it's a niche subject.
Yeah, but that's what YouTube is great for, because yeah, I mean, me and Stato, we talk about movies that we want to talk about. We don't talk about movies that are going to get hundreds of people rushing to watch us talk. We just hope that people are interested enough to come along and listen. So when I interview you guys and anybody else, if you're talking about comics that mean something to you, that's got to be interesting for people to listen to. That's my way of thinking.
Yeah.
That's why you are comic book gold, Willie. I really mean that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, comic book gold. Speaking of which, I suppose this would be this would be definitely a gold standard these days, wouldn't it, for comics?
Yeah.
It's got such a kind of like it's got such a fascinating history as well. Watchmen, even beyond the book, the whole kind of like the legal wrangles and you know, the way that the creators, I mean, even the creators have had a falling out. I gather they don't talk to each other anymore. There's all the stuff about how, you know, the recent TV show, it's critically acclaimed, yet at the same time there's people who kind of like kind of spurned it because it's not true to, you know, in their eyes, to the original book, and you know, you shouldn't be doing sequels to Watchmen because Alan Moore wouldn't be doing sequels and he doesn't own the rights to the book currently. All that said, I think there are a few people, you know, who've read Watchmen who wouldn't say that it is up there with, you know, one of the best comic book works, you know, ever. Even if people think that, you know, it doesn't hold up as well now as, you know, maybe when they first read it, or, you know, when it was first published in the mid 80s.
Well, why do you think that is?
Well, you know, there's plenty of works, not just in comics, but, you know, in every type of media that could have, you know, in most people's eyes, could have superseded it and have gone further, or you know, gone deeper. But for me, again, you've got to take it into the context of like when it was written, when it was created, the intent, and all that kind of stuff. And also, of course, certainly when I first read it, I think I was kind of like the perfect age, and it was round about the perfect time to be introduced to it, because there was a huge kind of fanfare, not just about this book in particular, but adult-oriented comics. You know, the whole graphic novel, is, I think, to the chagrin of Alan Moore, that's, you know, he's never been comfortable with that phrase. He just like calls them big, expensive comics, which I guess is a bit more honest. I think I was more into computer games at the time in the kind of late 80s, but what they would do sometimes is they would have an article or so, maybe every few weeks, every couple of months, where they'd highlight things in other media, including comics. And for some reason, Watchmen really seemed to kind of intrigue me because it seemed to be treading this fine line between what seems to be quite a grounded real world, but it would still have these kind of sci-fi elements to it. So, for example, in its world of 1985, there were a few variations in world history, such as Nixon was in his, I think it was in his third or fourth term in office because the Constitution had been amended. There were
I
things.
thought Nixon only did one term.
No,
God,
this
that
is
shows
so.
you.
This is in a set in a slightly parallel world where this in
Oh, sorry, I
1985,
was sorry, I was really distracted by the chat. Sorry.
But also you had these electric, you had these air balloons and the fire hydrants were electric cars. They would just plug in. There were no petrol stations and different kinds of like headgear that people would wear. But it was still recognizably the real world, just with these slight tweaks. So it wasn't something that slapped you around the face, you know, like a lot of kind of parallel dimension stories would do. They were very subtle and restrained, and I think more powerful for that. In a way, that was kind of symbolic for the whole book. It wasn't something like, "Oh, look, guys, it's superheroes for adults, and now they can get away with doing anything. They can be ultra violent, and they can be kind of like very gratuitous sex scenes and stuff like that," which I think a lot of people misconstrued that's what Watchmen was about when you had kind of like the 80s gold rush to create books, which, you know, again, were kind of like hyper violent and all the rest of it, the over exaggerated postures and the muscles and the splash page every other page. So in some ways you could say Watchmen probably has taken too much punishment and taken too much blame for what maybe a lot of the mainstream has come to see as the bad old days of comics creativity in the kind of the early, to mid.
I think
90s,
pick up on a few good points here. The first one being that it's not a graphic novel; it's a collection of
and all the rest of it. When it was more about the spectacle and the and style of, and Watchmen was.
Yep, yeah, I'm saying it's like a collection of 12 issues because when you read it, that becomes apparent. Because I read it as single issues. I don't know if you read it as a graphic novel or as single issues. But when you read it as single issues and then you see it collected, you see how each issue's been designed, especially with the text piece at the back of each issue, and thematically how they work. So in a way, they also kind of work as chapters when it's collected. But I think it works better if people approach it as individual issues that tell this ongoing story that eventually has this conclusion. What I liked about The Watchmen was it took established characters. Yep, what were you saying?
Well, yeah, no, just that when it was written, that people did actually have quite a wait. It was like usually instead of a month, it was like at least 5 weeks between issues, which was new at the time. But
yeah, it was longer. Yeah, it definitely was. But I mean, it's worth the wait. The thing was, these were already established characters that he was going to use when he was going to, because DC had got the rights to the Charlton characters, so he was going to use Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Nightshade, all these characters, and they said, no, you can't do that with these characters. We've got other things planned, and quite rightfully, he created his own characters. So I think that there was a certain resonance at the time, if anybody who was aware of comics and superheroes, because these were based on characters that already had variants out there, because in many ways the Blue Beetle and Spider-Man, there's very similarities between lots of characters in comic books across different companies, and that was there. So you, as a shorthand, you would understand who the archetype was that a certain character in Watchmen was supposed to be. And I think today, anybody coming to this graphic novel can still have that because they've seen the movies. So they're aware of certain types of superheroes, certain types of character, and they can read that into it. The one thing that slightly spoils it for anybody is the fact that it's been adapted as a movie, and the movie, I think, got the tone wrong. I don't know what you think about that, but I think the movie unfortunately made being a superhero in The Watchmen look sexy, whereas when you read the comic, it's very much like real people wearing real clothes, being as heroic as they can be. Some of them are just, they're not even anti-heroes, because I reread it recently, and the comedian is just an obnoxious, horrible character.
Absolutely agree.
And
They
the
were
problem with
never
the
meant-
movie is it makes him kind of sexy. Just
Yeah.
totally gets it wrong.
Thank you. You've just mentioned one of my biggest problems with the movie, because he is as he's meant to be in the graphic novel, and the movie is a bit of a misrepresentation. Thank you. I've never met anyone that's agreed with that before.
I think that it does have its fans, the movie, for different reasons.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad movie. It's a different thing, but it gets the book, it gets the tone of the book wrong.
I was looking forward to it because of the amount of kind of attention that Zack Snyder was claiming that he was paying to the book. But I was starting to get worried later on that, before the release, that it was overly slavish attention, which turned out to be the case, because it seemed to lack any of its own inspiration. It was just literally like a kind of like a blow by blow recreation, which you can't really do. It was never the point. It was never meant to be a movie in the first place, but also these were meant to be pitiful characters rather than aspirational characters. These weren't meant to be like Superman. In many ways is supposed to be, your favorite uncle. He's supposed to be like, the best friend you could ever have. And whereas the Watchmen are supposed to be people you'd never really want to associate with. You can understand their motivations from the perspective of neuroticism, and there's other kind of like psychological hang-ups between themselves. Rorschach seems to have a kind of, not just a kind of psychopathic, but a slightly narcissistic streak as well, when he's talking and referring to his kind of compatriots, kind of like he considers them his inferiors, but he kind of still works with them.
Despair of the Owl, I think, really shows that. The biggest thing for me is that.
I was under the impression that the movie was going to try and dig a little bit deeper into just how kind of pitiful these characters were, not to make a kind of more somber film or anything like that, but to retain that tone.
Well, maybe not so much pitiful as flawed, I think, is perhaps a better.
Well, I think I mean,
I think Zack Snyder has a problem with flawed characters. I don't think he understands flawed characters. He didn't get Superman right either, and his take on I don't think he's got. He's a stunning director, but I think he probably has more in common with Ditko's Mystery than he does with Alan Moore.
Yeah. I don't think there's not much kind of like depth. I think to his vision, so he can't really bring anything of himself, much of himself, to his movies. There's a lot of people who have a great deal of love for 300, but it never sat right with me. I never enjoyed the film. I wasn't a big fan of Sin City either. I don't really think I've ever enjoyed a Zack Snyder film, but he does have his fans, and right now there's a lot of excitement among his fans about his own director's cut for Justice League. For me, I would have preferred somebody maybe more untested. If they were going to do a movie, and I'm not saying that it was ever a good idea to do a movie based on Watchmen, somebody who was going to have his own voice and not necessarily just do whatever the studio wanted him to do, say, which is sex it up, big up the fight scenes.
But that's the corporate dollar. You've got to find the balance. That's probably why somebody untested would be better.
Yeah, the best way I could describe maybe at the time, Ridley in his at the time when he was making Alien, he might have been a better director. Obviously, Watchmen was done after that, but I think he was at his peak when he was making Alien, really, and I think that the fact that he wouldn't have probably tried to glamorize the characters and I think he would have captured something unique and tiny. It wouldn't have been a blow by blow recreation of the book, but something maybe just a nice something to sit next to the book itself, as a kind of an alternative take or something, but not the Sam Hamm version of the script, which was going to be kind of like originally what they wanted to do was have another big hit on their hands, like Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. That was like that kind of hammy tone that they wanted to do a movie, out of Watchmen. So a lot of people didn't really get what it was, I think, and that's not a big deal. That's not a crime or anything. But just from my own account, I've realized over the years that much as I'd love to see a really good Watchmen film, it can't really happen because it just wasn't designed that way. I haven't seen the TV
series. I don't know
series,
about that. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, this is Alan Moore's own words, but yeah, maybe somebody else.
Well, it's funny. I just responded to Stato, which I don't think's come up yet. That's saying that Moore won't deal with corporations because he doesn't like what they do with his characters.
Yeah. Stato
so
saying,
you may be right.
Yeah. Stato saying that the studios probably wanted them to be a bit more likable. And that I think that's probably right. That people aren't ready. Audiences probably don't want something that grim, but the movie was still pretty grim. I mean, especially like that scene with the Rorschach, with the meat cleaver, hacking into the guy's skull. So I mean, they didn't shy away, I think, from some grim scenes, but I think it was more
worse. There was a worse scene than that.
But
the thing about the film, the film is a good film. It's well made. And some of the stuff in it's just gorgeous and very well done.
Shot.
Very well cast as well in most cases. The meat cleaver scene was always found slightly odd because I like the way that he does it in the comic, and because the meat cleaver is very much almost slasher like in the way that they have that scene. But I think what it kind of lost was that in the comic, if you look at those 2 pages you look at here, there was a certain stillness to the comic because you had the 9-panel grid they were working with, and they just kept cutting up that 9-panel grid. And there's a certain kind of like almost a kind of stately way that the comic progresses, and the movie kind of lost that, and that's what tied it down to a sense of normality, and it's made it feel like real people. I don't think anybody in the movie comes across as a real person.
With $100 movie, they're going to want the studios are going to want audiences to feel that they've seen some sort of a blockbuster, which was never the intention of Watchmen. It kind of became a blockbuster comic, kind of after the fact, but it was never intended to be that. It was just supposed to be kind of like, I think it's supposed to be well received, but ultimately kind of just an interesting exercise. And the kind of the fervor that came out of it was never the intention. And I think that's the interesting thing, that if somebody actually wants to create a work that receives that kind of amount of fervor, it's never going to really happen properly, because it would have lost that sense of authenticity about it. You would have picked up from every page necessarily, that it wants to please, but it isn't inspired. And I think that's why the sense that I got from the movie that I never get from one panel of Watchmen. I never once feel that the comic is trying to please me. Rather, the author is trying to challenge himself, and knows that I'm open-minded enough to want to follow on the adventure, to follow him on that challenge, and that he could fail or he could succeed, but he wanted to open himself up to that challenge, and fortunately he did succeed, and we're all the richer for having done so. But
which I think is the challenge, and that quite a lot of Comicsgate books are succeeding with. Which is surprising.
Lots of people.
I just wanted to interject that as a real observation.
Yeah, lots of people are now becoming more adventurous, I think, because they realise, there's a big market out there.
Just being more true to themselves in what they intend to create.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I liked about Moore's writing, especially here, was he didn't force you to think a specific way about any of the characters. He portrayed the characters, and it's their interactions in the comic that allowed you to make your
going to be punished,
yeah,
for trying something, which is like, untested. It's
yeah.
you may succeed or not, but
You can try something else.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, so Rorschach is not a hero. And Moore says he's not supposed to be a hero, but
Sorry, Wullie, we
unfortunately,
lost you there. Can you repeat that?
well, Rorschach is not really a hero. In Moore's mind, he's not a hero, but he portrays him in such a way that you can see how people do interpret him as a hero, and that's interesting to me because it's almost like watching a Sam Peckinpah movie where people do bad things for good reasons, or do good things for what they think as a good thing, but it's a bad thing, and it's that moral ambiguity that's interesting about the comic, and again, it's something that the film didn't quite get, and it's going to bring me on to.
I don't think Hollywood is comfortable with moral ambiguity, and I think that Hollywood, not to its credit, the reason for that is that it probably considers, a creation that doesn't clearly sit on the side of what it sees as good. It sees it as kind of somehow morally bankrupt, which it isn't the case with a work like Watchmen. It has a point and a thread to it, which is not simply telling people, it's not a moral play or anything like that. It's there's something a bit more to it than that. And I think that the overall theme of Watchmen, if any, is power. And I don't think there's a proper, there's not a proper answer to the theme of power. It's not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's something that exists in the world where most people's experience, and we all have to kind of wrestle with our own relationship to it in terms of, what.
Because I've got up here a couple of images of Ditko's The Question, who then morphed into his character Mr. A, who of course Rorschach is based on. The idea behind these characters is that there is this straight moral good and evil, and there's no grey in between. And the moral ambiguity in the Watchmen, of course, pushes against that, and as a critique of that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't see it as a critique. They don't quite get that depth. I think that's probably because Moore liked Ditko's work, even though he was criticising the ideology behind his work. Because it's difficult not to like Ditko's work when you're reading even Mr. A, which is not an easy read by any means. I don't know if you've read either of these.
I've read sections of his work, and no, it's not an easy read. Particularly because it's kind of so harsh in terms of it's the way it portrays people who get their comeuppance. You kind of feel that there should be something a bit more to it, rather than this kind of grim meat hook kind of finale that that's meted out to the villains, and a lot of the time it's not even so much villains; it's just casual wrongdoers. In the mind of Mr. A. Funnily enough, I mean, Judge Dredd could almost be seen as a kind of like a slight kind of take on Mr. A.
Yeah,
in terms of like transgressions.
I need to say not now. I think I've stopped reading Judge Dredd now.
What you're saying because of like because it's too harsh, or because you think it's gone too PC?
It's gone woke. It's not like it used to be, where the slightest infraction.
I'm not sure.
The total uncompromisingness of Judge Dredd, even when he was wrong, that's what made him Judge Dredd. It was what I like.
It was a comedy for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a parody, but now.
But also, parody was an important point.
Yeah, and now it seems that 2000 AD in its own way, in a roundabout way, has decided it's got to take a side, kind of politically, in the current environment, and it's got to be seen to do that. And I think that really they may be preaching to the converted, or they may be trying to court a new audience. I don't know, but certainly people don't need to be. I think people never felt lectured by 2000 AD. Or led by the nose. They always feel that they're kind of like you're always you're shoulder to shoulder with it. It's never talking down to you. It's never talking up to you. It just feels like an equal. It feels like, a good pal. And I think with something like Mr. A in the question, this is where Steve Ditko, for all his, kind of amazing work on and Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, with something like Mr. A, it still has that sense of kind of like, he gives you this kind of like woozy feeling of like, being in a different kind of space, a different headspace, but you still feel you're kind of being lectured to. The whole idea of that I think he was a big proponent of Ayn Rand, and that he felt that people needed guidance.
Yeah, that's it. It was objectivism, wasn't it? That was a philosophy that he was following, Ayn Rand philosophy. So I didn't catch that, Carolyn.
Yeah, objectivism. Because there's something reassuring about the idea of objectivism. So I can relate to people who would search for meaning in it, while at the same time I would advise caution. I'm not sure.
Yes, definitely.
I had quite enough caution there.
And like most things, there's parts of it there that make sense, as is always the case. But to just believe in one ideology like that is very kind of like strange. I think if you are reading if anybody does read Mr. A, read it like a horror comic, and then you'll enjoy it more, because he is essentially like a horror comic, and this character will mete out his idea of justice at the very end, regardless of whether you deserve it or not.
It's pretty funny as well. If you read it as a horror comic, then you'll also see a kind of a humorous streak there too.
Yeah,
because it's so over the top and so kind of uncompassionate towards people who haven't necessarily kind of like reached, who aren't exactly the absolute scum of the earth. It may be just people who just casual wrongdoers. But, yeah.
Did you ever read the Daniel version of the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was an issue of the question where Denny O'Neill wrote a sequence where the question reads The Watchmen and associates himself with Rorschach, which I can't remember how it goes, but I remember reading it and thinking that's quite clever. It didn't go anywhere. He kind of like he ran out of steam. It should have been something that made sense in the book, but it was quite interesting because it was meta, but also The Watchmen has the comic book, the pirate book inside that, which is also a kind of meta retelling of the themes of the book. So there's lots of interest, kind of postmodern ticks, I call them, to these books, which are quite nice.
There's something definitely about, although there's a simplistic style as well to the art, it draws you in. Also, Mr. A, and the question is their simplicity, the black and white, not just literally, but in terms of the black and white thinking that makes it very easy to read. And in some way, although, it's kind of like horrific, you can see why it's seductive. It's a seductive read. It's a page turner, and at the same time, you can see almost to your horror why such thinking is also seductive. Just briefly to quote, Star Wars, I think it is, Yoda says, the dark side is seductive because it's easier to fall into. It grants you your wishes, but you've got to be careful, what you wish for.
Powerful, the dark side.
Yeah, it's the whole Faustian Pact myth. It never goes away.
It will.
So I definitely think it's something to be wary of. And, everybody knows that they've got their own perfect scenarios of how things can work out wonderfully, but at the same time, there is a price to pay, for any degree of wish fulfillment. So people need to be wary.
Indeed.
I know that there's a lot of people who win the lottery and they go, no, not personally, unfortunately, but they go mad on these spending sprees, and it's kind of ends up being the worst thing that's ever happened to them because they don't know how to handle it.
I was going to say, you've been on spending spree. I don't know about
Yeah. Maybe one of these days, play my cards right.
No, you must have a woman in another flat. I don't know about it.
Well, that would probably end up with me being less rich rather than more.
I did.
No, the ways of the world.
Anywho, right, moving
On
swiftly on from the Mr. A. Those were all great choices, by the way. Because I'd read most of everything apart from in Invisibles, but I loved it as a choice. And
Sorry, I have to hold my hand up, Wullie. Though I was posting in the chat because I haven't read Mr. A.
Oh right, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not at the top of most people's lists, I have to say. I bought a Fantagraphics, I believe it was, years ago. Did a collection of it, a soft cover collection I bought, thinking, oh, great. I have no idea who Mr. A was. And great, this is just like The Question or something like that. And then I read it, and it's hard going. It's tough to read. And even artistically, it's a totally different kind of feel to Ditko's work. It's almost like it's been drawn while he was angry.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to be in a sort of a trance when he was creating it.
Yeah,
I don't, Caroline. Yeah. The reason why it was there is because that was the main influence on Rorschach, that character.
Yeah, Rorschach.
So that Rorschach was basically, he didn't get the rights, Alan Moore, to use that character.
Sorry.
He came up with Rorschach instead.
Yeah, the Question was the character he was wanting to use. The Question is like a softer version of what became Mr. A, and he wanted to use it so he could critique the kind of ideology that Steve Ditko followed, which was the objectivism.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're back to Mortal Worlds. We're here at the beginning. If anybody's joined us since then, I know there's a few people been watching that haven't been in the chat. And
we circle back around.
It's done. I was talking about this with Stato last week. So it's done really well. First campaign, that's on pretty much how my first campaign was going as well, with the kind of like number of backers you've got and everything at this stage. You're in demand. How long are you thinking of staying in demand?
Well, pretty much until we fulfill, I think. And, so that I think everybody's had a chance, if they want to check it out. But,
cool.
Once filled, I think that, we're about ready to start on with another project. And I think this will be something new. Mortal Worlds, we have a lot of affection for.
Sorry, can I just say that'll be October, because we'll definitely by the end of October.
Definitely, right. Okay. Just say hello there to Exhaling Comics. So this campaign, again, all the stuff you've been talking about, I'm beginning to sense there's lots of things to do with Lovecraft and everything that's in this campaign.
No, as I say, Pete is an inscrutable genius.
Well, with Mortal Worlds, what since we're talking about the kind of the through lines of these these various comics and movies, Mortal Worlds, it doesn't have it's not a kind of like a deep meditation or anything. It's more of a straightforward actioner. It does touch on a few kind of interesting kind of foibles in terms of in science fiction. There are tropes which are kind of irresistible to us. So things like a couple of things like quantum paradoxes. Caroline was made the mistake of introducing me to people like Stephen Hawking and this scientist Brian Greene some years ago, which just fascinated me. Luckily, those were illustrated works as well.
So just blame me for everything, guys.
Just blame Caroline for everything. And it made me think, oh, for me, there's this special divide between the world of the, let's say, the supernatural, the world that supposedly is pure fantasy, doesn't exist, and the real world. It's like the quantum world seems to be where those things tie together. It seems to be the closest kind of like, almost like a twilight zone between the two, like a buffer zone. And in there, really weird things happen, which are kind of counterintuitive in the real world. And so I kind of figured, how far could those kind of things go? Like if people are tinkering in their laboratories and stuff like that, what kind of surprises could erupt? We had the Hadron Collider, which recently came up with this new particle. Is it the Higgs boson or something like that?
Well, no, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's about just looking at it and asking what if, and a mad ride with some philosophy in it.
Yeah,
and lots of colour.
So people didn't know if, like, some kind of weird Lovecraft type of entity would come out of this, or they'd create a black hole.
I sometimes think Cap's right. Cap, who better have got his wallet open to back our book. Wullie, that's an in-joke, in saying a super soldier discovers that man's first ancestor is our final descendant, a being of evil. I mean, Cap says that that's all we need to say.
No, that's not correct. That's not all we need to say. But the comic itself is, I suppose, always, the best kind of like route, to understanding what we're getting at. It's a very visual book, but at the same time, it's got snippets in there. I only understand snippets of, things I read, and, articles that come up in the news, current events, things like that. Because the world's become almost like so much more of a complicated place, possibly because, things like social media and so many different takes on everything, different interpretations. And this book centers on characters largely quite straightforward, but they are working for people who are, let's say, kind of like almost like gods compared to men in terms of their kind of intellectual capacity, the reach of their power in terms of the technology at their fingertips. And I guess just like in real world, all of these places like CERN, they will have guards and stuff and security who would ensure that, nobody kind of comes in to mess around with what.
But it's about exploring the possible consequences of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The breach of one reality into another.
But just imagine if, like, you just had a kind of like a day job, just like, walking the grounds and stuff and making sure that, all is well there. But then you actually find out that actually you're protecting something which is, a lot darker. And
it's about a reaction to that and what people do as a result of what they find out.
Yeah,
I think
so. Yeah, there's a lot of dark, weird goings on in Mortal Worlds.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Well, I like dark shenanigans, I've got to say. So yeah, I've backed it, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So everybody out there, yeah, get yourself some Mortal Worlds.
After what you've given us, I really hope that you enjoy ours as much.
I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. I'm sure I will. Yep. Are you still there?
Wullie's opinion will actually be quite important to me, because I do want Wullie's good opinion of the comic. Reread Elsa Dark.
He doesn't have a good opinion. We can learn from it, can't we?
We're going to have to learn from it.
Either way, it's a good thing.
Either way, it's going to be a win for us. But everybody who's purchased Mortal Worlds, they're going to have a great thrill ride.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. But yeah, I'm going to just quickly dive on to another one here.
We know what we hope.
And there we go.
I always want to enjoy
it. You might have seen me talk about this one before, guys.
You've got to back
it's not
this.
live yet. Cheers. Yeah, it's not live yet. This is the mailing list. I think I've got, I don't know how many I've got. I've got about 100 in the mailing list. It's not bad. Elsa Dark, Werewolves and Bampots. I don't mind if you call her Alyssa Dark or whatever. A lot of people seem to do that. And it's essentially a modern take on a Bronze Age horror comic. with a storyline that's told from 3 different points of view and 3 characters. The idea behind this is I'm going to tell 3 different, 3 different collections coming. This is the first collection. It's Werewolves and Vampires, and the final collection will be the origin of Ailsa Dark. So the character of Ailsa Dark is somebody that you'll get to know through other people's eyes more than anything as the stories progress. And I'm having fun with it and building the mythology up around it. And I just hope you could, if you don't mind, if you're watching this and you haven't already, put your wee name in here, click on I agree to the terms and sign up for the conclusion to Ailsa Dark, Werewolves and Vampires. I'm not going to bother playing the video. It's only lasts about a minute, so if you do go along there, you can watch it yourself.
When you launch it?
Well, I'm not too sure now, because when I started this, I wasn't working on this campaign, but I'm now working on this campaign, which is Charlie's London's From East Lane to the Limelight, which is a Charlie Chaplin graphic novel, and I'm doing a one-shot for this that leads into our main graphic novel. So I want to get that all wrapped up before I can say definitively when I'm launching. But I would say it's going to be probably around about November, sometime in November, is what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
Everybody keep your eyes peeled on this.
So you are you the artist on that? Sorry, I've been buried.
No, I've no idea who the artist is on the actual graphic novel. I do know that our own captain has produced this lovely little foil card here, and our own Chubb has worked on this cover here, as have we've got covers by Donald DeLay and Vinnie Tartamella. I always have trouble with that name. Get trouble with names that got lots of R's on them. And they're all great covers. Yeah, they're all great covers. It's going to be a terrific campaign, this. But no, I'm not drawing that. I'm doing a one-shot that leads into it. So it's just like I think originally it was going to be like an Ashcan, but no, it's going to be like a full-length American-style comic book that tells a story before the story that's in the graphic novel. So I suppose it's like an issue 0, if anybody remembers those. Yeah. Yes, it's something like that. It's good though. It's got I'm not going to tell you anything about it because I don't know what I'm made to do. It's got dinosaurs and spaceships and everything in it.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. There's no dinosaurs or spaceships, but yeah, sign up for this. It's all. I think Charlie's already got about 9 million people on the mailing list, so it's going to be a big one. So you want to get in early for this one. It's there's a lot of interest in this. And once I'm done with that, Ailsa Dark will be getting launched. I've also got another one that I'm working on, which I'll tell you all about later. Maybe not tonight.
And I don't know if we've mentioned it during the show, but Tatty Bogleman as well. So it's a lovely companion piece as well to Ailsa Dark.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Yeah, I've got plans for the Tatty Bogleman next year. So yeah, definitely going to be doing something with him.
I've been saying that word over and over again for 2-3 months because I'm like a child. When I find a word I really like, I just repeat it. Tatty Bogleman.
It's very euphonic, isn't it?
It is the Tatty Bogle.
Lovely word to say. I've renamed my cats Tatty Bogleman 1 and Tatty Bogleman 2. I just love saying that word.
Yeah, it sounds like such a nice thing. So it's such a nice word to be that kind of rolls off the tongue. So to give it to a complete cycle. Yeah. Well, talking about names that roll off your tongue, Call Me Mark is a name for you. This is his book, Not Daredevil. And the greatest name in comics. I think we've all just decided Tatty Bogleman is the greatest name. So sorry about that, Mark.
No doubt about.
But this is going to be funny. This is going to be a really funny book. So again, please think about signing up to this. It's going to do well too, because we know that his first book has done well. The Adventures of Kim Il-sung in Best Korea, which was a good read and a funny read. And it's the alternative history of Kim Il-sung and Korea. Yeah, it's done well.
Um,
Still in demand. Grab a
it's
copy of that if you have it.
Yeah, and you're going to
it's,
get
it's
your
a
time. Mark, very good for
Yes, he
fulfillment.
is. He's incredibly good for that.
yeah, and they're
As
all
are
kind of
all
like
Comicsgate.
they're all kind of handwritten with little. Did you guys get a little drawing inside yours as well? He's doing all kind of wee bespoke things on a lot of them, so that's great. Yep, good stuff. Yes. So yeah, it's still in demand.
I like my blockhead character as well.
It's also it's incredibly cheap to get as well. You can go digital too if you want to.
Captain Fuckhead.
Yeah, the Captain Fuckhead did this cover here, which again is
until he back up.
harkening back to
The spirit of Kim Il-sung.
Yeah, based on an old Golden Age cover as
Love
well.
that cover.
He's in the chat and he's on the screen. It's a Mr. Peephole Circus, and this is Phantom Volume 1, which is another fantastic book. Again, it's like incredibly affordable little A5 art book.
It's beautiful work.
Look at that. Look at that, guys.
Well.
All original art from Clock, sold out. Original cover art sold out. Fantastic. So yeah, I don't know how long this is going to be in demand, but
back them all.
Back them all.
It's an embarrassment.
Sorry, guys, I'm coughing at the mic. Mary Boy's here. Love this comic. Read it and just read it again immediately afterwards. This is Chubb's creation. The shorthand for anybody out there is Father Ted meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I always think by way of Jack Davis and Will Eisner.
This is generally some of the best talent in the UK at the moment. So
yeah,
everybody watching, you've got to make sure you don't miss out on this, because Chubb is going to be going places, but you want to be on this from the ground up. And there is an absolutely beautiful art book that comes with it as well. So I don't know how much awareness there is about that, but you get that, I gather, with the standard tier.
Yeah, you get the art book, and I got a couple of prints as well, because you never know what you're going to get when you go into an Indiegogo campaign. You think, I'll take this tier, I'm interested in, I'm just interested in the books, and then next thing you know, you get loads of stuff, which in my next campaign there's going to be some interesting things I'm going to be doing. Now that I've said that out loud, I have to think of something interesting.
It's always terrific when you get extra bang for your buck. Nice little surprises there. So.
Totally. Aye. And here's Gilmore's book, Peter Gilmore and Mandy Summers, Super Dead. That's done really well. Yeah. With the
I'd say this might be the most commercial book that Pete and Mandy have probably done so far as well. So this is like, I think they're definitely coming up into the big leagues now.
I think so, especially by having like an alternate cover by John Malin here. I still think there's this real nice alternative feel to Pete's work. This is just very tactile, and I just like it.
Action packed as well.
Yeah, these pages is just they're terrific. Look at it. This is just blood, sweat, and tears going into these pages. So yeah, great looking book. So consider backing that as well. Lots of fantastic books here. Yeah, I'm going to. You can hear my mouse. I've lost my mouse. You hear it scraping along my desk. So I'm just about to, just before we disappear into the ether, I'm going to bring this back up again. And say in 2 weeks' time, I'll be back with Comic Book Gold with Carla Tornielli, whose book, the Grim Reaper books, are up there in Indiegogo. And next week, because guys, I like to confuse people by not doing the same show every week. I alternate. Next week, I'll be here with Statistical Zero, and we're going to be talking about Bond, James Bond, the definitive James Bond, Sean Connery, and all the movies that he made as a character.
I'll be in the chat for that one, definitely.
Don't miss this one, Miss Moneypenny.
Brilliant. Looking forward to that. We're also going to be including my other favourite, Mr. Lazenby. You can see him there sporting the ski suit.
Not too late for him to make another Anthony.
No, definitely not. No, definitely. I think why not? A bit of CG, can tidy him up a little bit, and he'll be fine. Yeah, but yeah. So that's next week. We've got what we've got planned is we've got Bond with Connery planned, and then in 2 weeks after that, we're going to do the Roger Moore Bonds, and then we're going into October, so it's going to be horror for all of October. But yeah, this is going to be a fun one because I think we're both probably going to binge on Bond. Yeah, I think I watch all the movies every year anyway because I'm slightly obsessed
with the name for October then. Horror-tober.
Horror-tober, yeah. Hawktober, that doesn't work. I don't know what I'm thinking.
What's your,
but anyway, next week
what's your favourite Bond movie?
My favourite Bond? Oh, I don't know. I may have to keep that to next week. It depends what day it is, you see.
I don't know either.
My favourite, the best Bond is
next week.
the best Bond is of course Sean Connery. That goes without saying. But that doesn't always mean that the best is your favourite. So we'll find out next week.
Yeah.
As 2 weeks after that, we'll give you a bit more. Of course we will.
Movie, I mean. Which movie?
But they all say Sean Connery in the polls, don't they?
And we've got Walls Comics review with us. Either. I missed that. I've completely lost what that's connected to. Must have been when we were doing the other Indiegogo campaigns. But yeah, so Sean Connery would do.
How would it fit in the?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll just bring it into the hallway. Unwrap your own personal copy. And then back out again.
You can live
to
in
the next person. Yeah.
Yeah. But
they'll just bring the container to the house and then wrap your personal copy.
And extra habitats with each copy.
Yeah, I'm probably I don't know, maybe do a hand drawn issue next time for somebody. Charge a fortune for it. But yeah, but next week I'll be back with Stato, Mr. Connery. 2 weeks time, be back here with Carla. But I'm here right now with you guys. I've got your old Double Vision Comics logo on there. I'm liking the new one.
Thank you.
But did we do as we said we were going to, which was uncover the ultimate evil today?
No.
I don't know. See, I was thinking you were probably going to be doing that in your book. I was just trying to second guess. But if
we touched on it.
Yeah, we touched on it. I don't know. I'm not a big believer in evil as such. I'm not like Steve Ditko. But in saying that, it's definitely out there, guys. So watch yourselves.
Stay evil. No, don't stay evil.
Stay evil. Yeah. So stay evil. Yeah, that's going to be my tagline from now on. I'm going to steal that. We're looking for something. To end a show because it gets to this point and you just start waffling. Stay evil.
Pete says, great show, enjoyed that. Cheers all. I guess thank you for having us on, Wullie, and everyone who came in the chat. It's been a really, really nice show to be on.
Yeah, that's grand. Thanks very much. No, I've kind of wanted to do this because I mentioned it ages ago, so it was great to get you guys on here and have thoughts on
really
stuff.
Had a great time. Thank you, everyone in the chat.
That's great. Me too.
Really
cheers, guys. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for all turning up in the chat. And
we'll
tonight
chat
the
again.
chat worked and I was able to share it. So last week I wasn't able to do that because StreamYards was acting up, but everything's working again. See? We've defeated the ultimate evil. So thanks, guys. See you all next week.